I have a question for you. Are you living by faith or are you living by feelings? Faith is a thing that pleases God more than anything, and it's not just possible to live this life of faith, it's God's promise, and it's to be the normal life of a Christian. If you're living from this place, I'm so encouraged for you right now, and I pray that God would continue to increase your faith. If you're not living from this place, this isn't a condemnation, but rather an invitation or an opportunity for you to allow God to work this faith in you. So a lot of people have got a wrong conception of what faith is. People look within themselves to try to find this faith or to try to frantically build up this faith. But faith has nothing to do with our feelings. Faith is simply believing God, believing that He is who He says He is, that He's done what He says He's done, that He's going to do what He says He's going to do, and to simply trust Him to do that. It's actually so simple that it's incredibly difficult to explain. And the virtue doesn't lie in our faith. The virtue lies in the object of our faith, which is God. Most people are controlled by their feelings, and when we become overwhelmed by our feelings, we actually allow them to speak louder to us than God. But we know that our feelings are ever changing, and they don't represent truth, whereas God's word is never changing, and it is true all the time. What we need to do is to be able to turn away from using our emotions as a guide and look to God's word and to keep His truths ever before us, no matter how we feel. The Bible tells us to be diligent with this. It tells us to put on Christ, to be controlled by the Spirit and not by the flesh. And we don't need to be troubled at all if we continue to just keep our eyes on God. So the key to faith is as simple as this: to see God clearer. As we see Him clearer and recall His truths to mind more and more throughout the day, we're going to begin to see the world through God's eyes rather than God through the world's eyes. And everything else in comparison to Him is going to become so small. The things that seemed so overwhelming before won't even trouble us, and a mighty faith will have been worked in us. So the question is, how do we see Him clearer? And the answer to that is that we need to know Him deeper. We need to build our relationship with Him through prayer and the Word. And as we meditate on the words of who He reveals He is, and as we spend time with Him developing intimacy and getting to know Him more, we're going to see Him clearer. We want to prioritize our time to come before Him and to read the Bible, not to get information, but simply to know Him and to become like Him. You know, as you know Him deeper and as you see Him clearer, your faith will actually increase automatically. And what began by a mighty effort at the start will become the easy and natural habit of the soul. But you might say to me, Matt, you know, I'm so far away from living in that place and I just feel so discouraged at the moment. But don't be discouraged, because Jesus says in Luke 17 verses 5 to 6 that if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, be uprooted and cast into the sea, and it would obey you. And Jesus uses hyperbole here. He takes the smallest seed and shows that it can grow into the biggest tree. And this is a great analogy for what He can do with your faith, because it isn't the quantity of faith that's important, but it's more the presence of genuine faith. And you can take that little bit of faith that you have and do your part by bringing that before Him, and He will be faithful to grow that. God can meet you where you are and start growing your faith today. This life of faith is possible, and you don't have to stress and strain, but it's going to take diligence and it's going to take a commitment and a consistency in spending time with Him and desiring this with all your heart. And I can promise you that if you do that, God will reward the small faith that you have with a mighty faith. I've seen in my life through tremendous difficulties and overwhelmed with feelings and circumstances that taking the little that I have before God, He has blessed me beyond what I could imagine. And I want to encourage you and tell you that if He's done this in my life with the circumstances that I've faced, He can do this in your life too. And I'm so encouraged for you to see what God can do if you would just bring the little that you have before Him. Take care, friends. Bless you. If you like this video, give it the thumbs up below. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new videos. Feel free to leave any comments or questions below, and don't forget to share with your friends.